Hi, I'm Cage.
Hi, I'm Ellie.
And this is Maximus. He's our tiny home on wheels, Sprinter 2018 dually all-wheel drive. We decided to go for the couch bed. It's not as common, but it was something that we felt would work well for us. Right now it's in a couch mode, and there is a pin that actually releases it on the side here that we can basically pull, and it will slide out the rest of the way and open up. So this is the fridge, and it is the Dometic, whichever one it was that comes with the two separate chambers, so you can do a fridge and a freezer on it, and it runs off the 12 volt and the 120 volt. We're really happy with the performance of this. It's been going solid for over a year now, and the wattage that it actually takes is barely noticeable. Designing the van, we had certain requirements that we needed a lot of storage. As a guitarist, I have a bunch of guitar equipment that I have on board. We also wanted certain luxuries like a microwave. We also needed a secondary monitor for bookkeeping, and maybe we can double it as entertainment. So the solution that we came across was doing a smart TV. So in here we have a 27-inch Roku smart TV, and we can plug in our laptop into the lines, use it as a secondary monitor. It's nice, we can hook up a DVD player, slide it out when we're in bed mode, we can enjoy a movie. It also doubles as a security monitor. So when we're in places that we're uncertain of what is going on around us, we can just take a peek and see what's happening, see what the noise is, if it's a bear, is a truck full of trouble showing up. Thankfully that one hasn't happened. Actually, neither one of those has happened yet. Under here is the actual 40-inch drawer slide that comes out. This is where I get to store all my toys. So guitar, a pedal board, you know, you move in with certain priorities and you see where those priorities lie when you build it out. Underneath on board electronically, we have a 400 amp hour battery system as well. It's the Bodywork lithium 100 amp hours. We also had it designed that we can install an extra two in case we need to increase the battery bank. So in here we have a bunch of our electronic control, including our S-Bar D2 heater, our battery monitor, and just a basic cradle for the remote control. We have the Max Air fans, two of them, front and back. We're really happy with the performance of them. I really like them, particularly because they have the cover on it that allows you to keep them open when it's raining. I find that's really important because when it is raining, that's when things can really get a lot of moisture in here, and that's when you want to have your airflow going. On this control panel, we have a lot of the small functions, and the labels are like close to what it is. So we have the fans on the roof, we have the aerator for the Nature's Head toilet. The GPS is actually a screen, the monitor up front, that I use for the security cameras, but also it can double as a rear camera for the van, or when we're hitched up with my work trailer, we'll be towing that and I can see on the rear side of it. VHF is our Wii Boost as well. That's wired in, our basic water pressure, and a few other things that we're going to be working on in the future. Behind this is where all the guts land. So this is it gets a little more intense back here when we start dealing with our 12 volt fuse panel. We have our battery disconnect, alternator disconnect, our inverter disconnect. Back there we have the Victron 2000 watt inverter. It's a very solid unit. We're happy with the performance of it, except it actually peaks around 1600 watts. So if you're planning to run something that's more than a 2-slice toaster, I would recommend you go for a 3000 watt. That is something that we want to upgrade because we can't run the microwave in half the toaster. Also as well in here we have our AC system, so we just have 4 simple circuits going around, and then we have some of the wall roaches that are just on already that are for the Wii Boost, And then we have an HDMI splitter inside the vehicle as well for the camera system. When you live in a van, there's going to be things that are work in progress unless you have it completely built by someone. And this is a temporary switch I have for our 12-volt water heater. That is a 300-watt unit, and it is basically a boat water heater. But in this application, it works really well. The trick is that it will draw 300 watts to heat it, and then it will stay hot for about 12 hours as the temperature declines. But if you run it and stick your face under the tap, as soon as it's finished heating, you will get burned. Trust me, I know. We'll come further back here. We have a few extra items, like we have the cigarette lighter / no one actually uses it for that anymore. It's always power. We have a couple spots here for charging the USB plugs. We have one that is an HDMI that is for going to the television. The other one comes from the DVR that records on the camera system. So I can always just mount the small monitor from the front dash and plug it into here and have a small screen running. So in case we didn't want to have that going all night and keeping Ellie awake, and I can still sleep with one eye open depending on where we are. The range itself, we got it at Magic Chef. It is from Home Depot, and I think we paid about $330 for it. Obviously 4-burner. It comes as a natural gas unit, but it comes with a conversion kit that converts it to propane. So we have a 5-pound propane tank on board that's in an isolation box. That has a bleed hose that you stick out the bottom of the van, so that if you ever have some sort of tank leak, it will just go out. Propane is heavier than air, so it will do its thing with gravity. The one downside I would say with this particular cooktop we found is that it goes hotter because propane burns at a hotter temperature. So we kind of deal with the issues of you got to watch stuff a little more. Even when things are on low, you can't, it's not as low as a normal stove. Plus side, we can put 4 things on at once versus a lot of the RV stoves that we found. 2 burners were still more like 2 burners like this, so you're not really going to get 2 large pans onto it. Here we can fit really 2 large pans and 2 medium-sized pots if we were feeling really ambitious that day. The countertop itself was actually also from Home Depot. It was a stock item. I'm not sure what type of wood it is. My Ellie could answer that. But it came in an 8-foot piece, and we took off about this much, so I would say that's about 7.5 feet long. We're really happy with the layout that we've done, that we can have so much cooking and prep space, and at the same time when one of us are working here, the other one tends to work over with the block cutout. And that block cutout that we have there also doubles as our table, our desk, and it's what we cut out from this section and we never threw away, and it just kind of stuck around and became a staple of living in the van. For the back we have the sink, also purchased from Home Depot, along with the faucet itself. The depth is where you make up, versus some of these things can be really shallow, or they can be top mount, or you have something that's double, that's just going to take up a lot of space. So the compromise that we found works for us is the depth of this, which is, I think it's about 10 or 11 inches deep on it. As for the overhead storage, this is one of those situations of we had to move into the van and get on a trip, basically coming home from Atlanta, where we were doing a lot of our build. And we didn't have time to do cupboard doors and all this sort of stuff. So it started this way, and it stayed this way because we found it's very functional not having cupboard doors. So if you have the sort of situation where you can have baskets kind of hold everything and hide what you have, then you don't need to have all the extra motion, because we're in here so many times in a day. You don't have to open it up every time, whack your partner in the head, and then pull it down, then apologize to them. Under here is the kind of the utility section. First thing is our water tanks are actually underneath the chassis right now. So we have a freshwater tank that's kind of located in the central area of the van. That has functionally about maybe 5 to 7 days worth of water for the 2 of us on it. And then there's another gray tank that's located under the back end here. It's a lot smaller. It's running, really we only have to empty it every 4 or 5 days as well. We have a pump system that will draw it from the under the chassis into the accumulator tank that is underneath here. So we have the water pump that's at the back, along with the pressure accumulator that's behind here. we have the 12-volt water tank that's over in this section. Also underneath here, we have our water tank intake as well. So I chose to have the connection on the other side of the cabinet here for our water intake, because I don't trust everyone in humanity enough. That's where I don't want to have it so someone can just walk up to a water tank, jimmy the lock over and throw a bunch of bleach or who knows what in on the tank while you're sleeping and you don't know. So the access is basically behind the locked doors, comes in. We also have an air bleed hose. This tank here is actually, we have a newly upgraded a radiant in-floor heat system. So that is the S-Bar D5 system that heats the fluid, and it will pump it and cycle it around, so the whole floor has the radiant hose in it. One of the things that we weren't expecting to have happen was having a pandemic that would possibly keep us in Canada for the winter. So one of the things that we're working on doing is extending that radiant heat hose to circulate underneath the tanks, and we'll wrap the tanks up, and that will keep them warm from freezing if we happen to still be here December, January, February. Like I said, not in the original plan, but in van life you have to improvise a lot. We also have plumbing coming around to the other side of the van that is going to be for what is currently just our bathroom, but it will be a shower at some point. In the meantime, this is the throne of the Nature's Head. People ask us all the time, do we like it? We love it. It's expensive, but it's well worth it. I would say never put in one of those porta potty cassette things. Just my own opinion. Yesterday I was showing a gentleman it, and he's like, does it smell? And what do you put it on? Well, you put it on, well, it separates for one. So you have your lemonade collected in one, and then your chocolate connected in the back bin, and that goes on to dehydrated peat moss. And once it gets turned over, it just becomes dehydrated peat moss. So when this gentleman was asking me this, I took a moment to open it up and show him the number 2 chamber, and he was instantly calling his wife over to come smell it because it just smelled like earth, which is a really odd show and tell, but it happened. The lemonade itself, you have to empty that every 2 or 3 days, depending on who's in here and how long. In the summer, it can begin to smell sometimes, so you got to stay on top of it. With Ellie and I, we have the relationship where she does the cleaning and I do the emptying, and that's just like there's no relationship tension over that. And it works well. So the disposable items that come along with using the bathroom, those go into a separate garbage can. It is one of those things that in North America we're not used to that kind of stuff. It's normal in other cultures to have to do that depending on their plumbing infrastructure. So it's just something you get used to, and it's one of the maybe more downside things of a nomadic life, but it is, in my opinion, way better than having to empty a black tank, which I've never had to do and never want to do. Finally, we have the storage area, and this is the shared closet for Ellie and I, along with, we each have our own basket of stuff in here, and then our kind of miscellaneous little things in here as well. This will be actually a sliding door that we'll have covering it, although once again it's very convenient not having doors, so once we do put something on, it'll be a question of, will this suddenly become a new nuisance for us? Solar panel on the roof is actually a 6.5 foot long residential graded one, so it's not meant for RVs. It is at a 385 watt panel. When we were driving to Arkansas last year, we saw it peak at 436 watts, which was pretty exciting for someone who kind of geeks out about that stuff. It works enough for us. It's a little bit more of a struggle when you start getting to the days where you have shorter daylight. And that's when we have the alternator connection as well that helps, and the grid system. Something that's also in the future plans is, as we hitch up our trailer for when we're going to work locations, I want to get an extra panel or 2 onto that will be on a pivot, and the charge controller that we have is large enough to accommodate the extra size of panels. The lighting themselves, these are just simple 12 volt pot lights that we got from Amazon. Really low wattage, you barely notice. Once you turn them all on, you barely see them drawing anything, but they are a 12 volt direct connection. With the actual design that we put in here, we want to not be stuck to necessarily a rows of lighting, so we decided to do kind of an organized random design on the ceiling. We like it. It's kind of we're both people who like things to be clean and straight lines, and everything has kind of its proper angle in place. But then there's something about lighting that in our old house we wanted to do a really random design like this, but if we try to sell that house, the buyer may not love it. So we kind of adopted that into here as one of those things we didn't get to do there, but we're happy that we got to do in this place. Decided we want to have a window at the back corner by the sink, which kind of, we have it framed out to kind of feel like a normal-ish window, as if you were in a house. And then the other one was we cut in ourselves at the side here. And this is really nice for when you're doing paperwork or you're just lounging and want to sit and look at a lake or something. It is a nice view out. So the reality is, with a side door panel, you're not really going to be screwing much to that. So you might as well cut it out, enjoy the views that you get to have. We debated putting in windows on the back side, and we've seen places, you know, going all the way around. We feel like it was not necessarily a good use of space, and also in colder climates you have to battle the cold environment, so you're going to lose a lot of heat out those as well. These two windows, we have window coverings that have Reflectix and which has some extra insulation sewn into them. It makes a big difference in the winter. With a fully windowed van, I would not want to be in Arizona in the summer. The whole place will just magnify the heat coming through. It is like being in a greenhouse or under a magnifying glass, it feels like, if the sun really starts beating and you don't have window coverings for those. So Mercedes has their headliners that comes up and it will end about right here. And after peeking behind it, we realized if we cut this out, we can double the storage space. So that's what we did. The stuff is really tough to cut. I ended up taking a grinder with a metal cut blade, seemed to be doing the trick, and got a nice horizontal line and went all the way around it. And we fastened in some brackets, 1/2-inch plywood, did a seal around it, and we repainted the whole thing to have a nice kind of flow to it. And then up here we store easily 2 pillows and 2 duvets. This is just our drop down curtain. This was an improvised thing. You'll find if you're doing van life or a lot of travel, you do have to improvise a lot. So it was starting to get cold. What we had here before was not really suitable or doing a good job. So on the fly, I went to U-Haul and I bought a moving blanket for like $17 or something, and stapled it to the back side of this piece of strip here, and just screwed the thing up into the wood, placed it out, drew a Sharpie line, and you just cut it in place, and it's a custom fit curtain within an hour, and it doesn't cost hundreds of dollars. So also on board here, we have a lighting control system that we've put in. So this is just some gear you order from Amazon. So we have the roof LED bar, and then we have the right side cube lights, the left side cube lights, and the rear lights. This is also going to be connected into the trailer. I'm going to be putting in a light bar on the rear of the trailer. And the last one here is actually a beep kill switch. So we're working in commercial environments. As an electrician, we're landing on construction sites sometimes. It is important to have that beep available to us. But if you're pulling into a campsite at night, or you don't want to draw attention to the fact that we're backing a vehicle, that is a handy feature to have. Keeps it kind of a little more stealthy as you're pulling in. Paneling that you see is a PVC. It's not wood, it's not plywood, or any other material you might end up using. The PVC we ended up going with as an experiment, and I'd say overall we're happy with it. The PVC is lighter weight than wood, and as I said earlier, it's not subject to the same mold and absorbing smell. The downside of it, it's very soft, so if you bump into it, you might have to do like a touch up and fix it up again. But it was neat to work with, delicate at times too, and expensive and hard to get. But somehow we overcame all those, and we got our hands on some, and we're trying it out. It was something I felt comfortable using, and woodworking is not necessarily in my blood, so this was an alternative item. I'm used to working with PVC, so as an electrician, this stuff is PVC up here as well, and there are parts in the van where this PVC board that is just a trim, I was able to heat up and melt to form with corners of the van, which we could see at the back, for example. Here's the one of those examples of melted PVC. Goes with this nice curve, because usually these are the hard spots of doing a van build, is how do you make the rounded corners of a van look good. This is one of the solutions we came up with. Back here is our water connection space. So we just do the direct hose sort of thing. We're working on getting a filtration system put in as well, so we don't have to trust the park water as much as we do. With the floor, we have, I would say it's almost, I'd say 1.5 inches worth of pink board insulation on the bottom. And then with that top 1/2 inch, we used basically the red PEX plumbing hose and laid that in with a bunch of flanges when we're placing the floor. And then we did the factory floor on top of it. And the whole thing works really nicely now. We've got to use it a few nights with the radiant system. Insulating the floor is so important, especially if you're in a colder environment. I would hate to be walking on the ice box that you can experience otherwise. On the exterior of the body, we chose to go with a Plasti-Dip. Even though the van was brand new when we got it, I had dealt with a lot of Sprinter vans prior, and particularly the white ones are bad for rusting. So we opted for the Plasti-Dip, and we used about 6 cans of gunmetal gray and sprayed it on there. We ended up doing a Raptor spray all around the bottom rock plate as well. That took a lot of extra time, to tape off everything, prep the van, all sort of things. We wanted to go that way so that on the front of the van, for example, the top above the window, it can get stone chips very easily. And once those chips get to the metal rusts very easily. So in this case with the Plasti-Dip, we can just whip up the aerosol can, spray over the cut, and then it's good again. We even went as far as popping off all the plates, and underneath this, there is a weld lip that is like this, and it will basically have all the water run down and sit there. That's why you see so many of these vans that end up rusting. It's coming out the bottom plates because this lip. So you have to take a bunch of marine grade silicone and put it on the side to allow the water to run off. And everything we did, it was just trying to extend the life of the body, especially while we're off-roading and stuff. To get a scratch on the side, you wouldn't want to do that to a premium paint job. So my butchered Plasti-Dip job is just fine to get scratched up and then respray. The dually van is rated for, I believe, a 7,000 pound towing capacity. So we have a dual axle 7,000 pound trailer that I use for my work that we hitch up to this. It actually, with the high torque engine that this 3500 is, when you're driving that thing, you kind of feel the weight of the engine sitting on it, and I didn't like it compared to the 2500 engine. The 2500 engine cruises very nicely on highways and things like that. So if you don't need a towing capacity, go for the 2500. Don't worry about the dually, because there's definitely a mileage difference on the vehicle. But with this 3500 engine, when you're pulling something, we were able to go up and down like Ozark Mountains no problem with this thing. And it was like going through like Smoky Mountains of Kentucky, very easy. I was passing the trucks on cruise control, and the engine was barely working up on the RPMs. So that's when I became very happy with it, and I realized why we had the dually, is that extra power that you have. We basically chose this life because we wanted to have more opportunity than what the normal job and the normal living situation is going to give us. So prior to this, I was running a company with 5 employees. We had multiple vehicles. We had a big overhead expense that we had to achieve every month prior to us actually taking any money home. And we were newly married at the time when I was involved in this lifestyle of being a business owner. And she would not be seeing me come home until about 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, of which
6-7 days a week.
Yeah. Something had to change as I constantly was working. So we started looking at the expense of the overhead and realizing like this is all our money we have to come up with, and I'm a walking heart attack waiting to happen.
Yes.
Something we've learned about myself is that I won't necessarily make a decision very easily until you start showing me financially this makes sense.
That's true. So I put it in a graph form, in chart form. I'm like, he's a visual person. Let's see all these different ways that I can communicate to him of this traditional life that we get told that we need to live this certain way, particularly after you get married. You think you buy the house, and so we did that. We bought an old century home built in 1897. We gutted it. I think we touched pretty much every single room in that house over 2 years. So you make your dream home.
Yeah.
And then in the end, you're not really happy with it because it costs so much to keep maintaining it.
Then one day I come home and she says, guess how much this house is costing? Our house was only $330,000 new. And for Canada, that's a pretty inexpensive house.
Yeah.
And so we had a low mortgage on it, but it still was costing us, I guessed, $18,000, $16,000, depending on property tax or hydro bills. And she comes up and says, it's $25,000 a year. So then you start thinking, I have to make $32,000 to pay for that $25,000 for the house that I am barely in, and she's alone in all day, and it's kind of out in the country. It was a nice place, but isolated. And we realized this is not working for us, and we had to make a lifestyle change. And that's around the time when we started seeing other people who were changing how they're living. And we saw Kristen from Barefoot Theory in her van, and I was like, that's really cool. Honey, look at this.
I know, because all the people, they seemed like they had de-stressed their lives, and that was a goal for us. And what's a commodity today that you wish you had more of? You think it's money, but really in the end you want more money because you actually want more time for the things that you enjoy and the hobbies and the passion projects that you have.
So we looked at the money aspect and we're like, this is a big motivator, and my wife's love language is time. So there's got to be an exchange here. So it's one of those, maybe if I'm making less money, if I don't have a house to pay for, we can spend more time together. Because she said, what can you do if we were saving $32,000 a year? And we're like, we realized we could take months off and not have to pay for that property.
Can you tell me about some of the challenges that you faced in this lifestyle?
Well, I can tell you that one of the challenges I first faced in getting into having this van was when we first picked it up and purchased it. I'd been in previous Sprinter vans because we had work ones, and I didn't realize how small they really were. When you see something on a small computer screen, it somehow jumps out and seems larger than life. And I stepped into the empty cargo van, we picked it up from the dealership, and I start to hyperventilate because I'm like, this is small. I don't even think you can fit a queen size bed in this thing. So I'm like freaking out because the house is closed. That's sold. That chapter, like, that is closed.
No take backs.
No take backs. This is the new future for us. And I'm thinking, I think we have made a horrible, horrible mistake.
Where's my paper bag? She's got a hyperventilate.
Paige is giddy with excitement, talking with the salesman about all of the bells and whistles on the van, and I'm like ready to rock in the corner. But it is amazing that once your mind adjusts to a new space, it actually expands.
Yeah.
And you realize that when you have your home, or let's say you're more renting, you just live in your home so much, you're not as much out in the community, out in the public space. But being with the van, you're using the public and community spaces so much more. So you actually feel like you have a ton more space. I feel like everywhere we go, this is my backyard, that's my front yard. To speak to another challenge we faced initially when we first were sharing the space in the van was, you're used to sharing, for us it was 3,000 square feet, so we were never bumping into each other. But now suddenly the two of us are put into a tiny square foot home, and we were constantly bumping elbows or in each other's space. So you have to realize it requires patience to do this, patience with each other.
And it was one of those, I realized, okay, I'm verbalizing things like, I'm going to go brush my teeth now, but I have to get past her to do that. So for our relationship in particular, she just told me, just tell her to move.
Just tell me what you need me to do.
Yeah.
Skip the interpretation of your brain to my brain.
Yeah.
Of what needs to happen, because you're also a male brain to a female brain as well.
Yeah.
So once we communicated, just tell me. Don't tell me what you need to do. Just tell me what you need me to do. Oh, can you be at the front of the van? Yeah, sure, no problem.
It is a weird thing to do. I'm not used to telling my
I said, just
spouse
tell me
what
where to go.
I had permission to do this, and
Yes.
I'm still even adjusting to that over a year now. So I still ask, or I don't. It's like even with employees, I wouldn't say install this meter base. I would say, can you install this meter base? So I'm the same way with, honey, would you mind moving to the front of the van?
Yes, you're very polite about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you gotta keep the cherub-like demeanor going on when you have a relationship you want to have lasting in your van.
Oh, another challenge, but that was initially, we didn't have heat, we didn't have running water.
Yeah.
And it was January, February, minus 25 Celsius.
Yeah.
But now we have like great comforts.
What kind of advice would you have for somebody that's thinking about doing this?
Don't expect it to be like Instagram. That is a big thing right off the bat. Those moments are very far and few between, unless maybe you're lucky and you live in California. There's a lot more to functioning day to day that it actually takes work to do. And it actually takes grit to do. And it takes being able to improvise and think on the fly.
Personal philosophy on life, if I could speak to this, is living in the moment and being available for other people, which requires time to give to them, and being available for yourself. We live in such a fast-paced, hectic life where it's so easy to be distracted by what we have on screens or what we have around us. Taking those moments and time to just center yourself, to decompress, and whatever way that works for you. And for us, it's often, we find nature really healing and really therapeutic for us, and just time together with playfulness and fun thrown into the mix. And minimally. Living minimally.
I like how the guys on the Minimalist documentary had said it, where they said love people and use things, because the opposite never works.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's something we saw in this too, where it's like the stuff that you can accumulate in life will not make you happy. The happiness, it's something that you have to have inside of you, and that's maybe comes how you live. And are you like stressed out with work, or what are the environmental things that are causing you your anxiety or your sadness? And you have to work at those things to find that happiness. And once you do, you're able to share that with other people. And I think there's a lot of people these days that are lonely, and they're looking for someone to talk to, or someone to have real relationships with.
Connections, authentic connections.
So we look for those authentic connections, and the really neat thing is that in this lifestyle, we have met so many people just at random that we've just connected with. And it's just usually in a parking lot, or we find their van, we park next to their van, and they come back and we strike up a relationship, and next thing you know, you're going for coffee in a few days or something. And
then you're going to go visit them in Montreal or wherever they happen to live.
Yeah. Well,
the world is small.
The world becomes a smaller place, and it's also your whole backyard at the same time.
Where can people follow you if they want to find out more about you guys?
People in the van life community finally convinced us to get an Instagram. So we finally gave in and got an Instagram. It's at cage with a K _and_Ellie.
Hey everybody, it's Forrest the filmmaker. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Alternative Dwellings. If you want to see more, playlists are popping up right now where you can watch all of our archived episodes. Or if you want to see new ones, make sure to subscribe, because they premiere at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every single Monday. Hope to see you guys there.